does his yoga. Really twisted, far from sober. Overdoser, rum and coca, going loca, showing no love. Drop with the party's wave, solo dude, I don't move for brains. Got your wifey in a state, pulled up looking like I made a paint, so it's crazy late. Kick it with the vampire, slang higher, roll with the witty finesse, like Super T. Dude said he's the best when it's news to me. Super mean, ride on the rhythm, I cruise the beat. She starts off when I don't usually, but I name it.
If you're in the block with a whip then, raise up a hand on my lighter. Murderous phrases, I'm hyper, making my way through the night just. If you're in the block or a whip just, raise up a hand on a lighter. Murderous phrases, I'm hyper, making my way through the night just.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Jack Ramsays, Danny Marang, Brandon Sprague on a glorious Monday afternoon. Tax day for all you heathens out there that haven't done your tax. What the hell am I doing? No, don't just do it. Just don't end up in jail. Don't end up in jail. That's how we're going with this. I had a long talk with somebody about taxes today, and they're like, yeah. I didn't do mine for like 6 years. And I'm like, you didn't do what?
You know what's funny is I had a dinner the other night with some friends, Danny, and I found out a guy that I know. He's a friend, but he said he got a parking ticket 4 years ago, and or not a parking ticket, a speeding ticket, like an official ticket, and he just never paid. I'm like, what happens? He goes,
yeah,
I don't know.
That's called a warrant.
That's what I said.
That's what happens there. Trust me, that's not great. So there you go. Everybody's wondering about the new song. Yeah, there's a new song that started the show because I got hit with a DMCA complaint for a song that I own. So I changed the music over. That's what happens. But it is the end of the season. We have exit interviews. We can talk about a review of the season. We'll talk about the interviews that we did have. I was in the building, got to ask a couple questions. We'll sneak in some Hoop Summit talk because I haven't had a chance to really talk about it a ton. It was an insane week with unbelievable recruits, and we'll start pivoting towards the offseason. You will start seeing a lot more content both here and on the Jack Ramsays Patreon as we push super hard into the offseason, because I hate saying this, it's what's more important right now. So without further ado, Mr. Sprague, how you doing, good sir?
I'm doing great. I'd like to start today's show a little differently than most shows, if you would oblige. Job well done. I can't believe you did it. I can't believe you went to all of those games in the final month. That was one of the worst teams I've ever seen in my life. And I can't believe that you and Sean Hyken, and I would shout out other people as well, like Casey Holdall, our good friend. But Holdall works for the team.
He's employed. He's contractually obligated to be there.
You made a choice, and God bless you for making that choice, because not so many people in my life would have made that same choice. So
I think most people have told me I wouldn't have done that shit. Some version of that has come across more times than I could count. So,
well, I was texting somebody about the Rockets-Blazer game that Scoot had a good game in, and they quite literally responded, I didn't even know they were playing tonight. I was like, well, I can't blame you. So thank you for the coverage. Great job. It is not, I know it seems like a great, easy, fun thing, but sometimes these seasons hit, man, it becomes like a drag to a certain extent.
And that's why we podcasted less, was my sanity.
Yes. That's kind of what I assumed.
Yeah.
You know,
I was like, I'm not gonna sit here and go over what's happening on the floor, because in the greater context of things, it does not matter.
No.
And that sucks. And that's kind of what we tried to tell everybody coming into the season about how it was going to be, how difficult it was going to be. But to an extent, you're not wrong. Congratulations, the season is over. Like that's kind of where we start with this, right? You know, they made it through 82 and everyone's alive, and I don't think anyone is going to have off-season surgery. You know, knock on all the wood. Like nobody that I know of. I guess it's probably the best place to start is like the health check of everybody.
Well, it's a weird health check because obviously the health didn't seem very great according to the reports, and so it's more like, is everything okay, and we kind of understand what's happening here, or is there something further that we need to investigate or dive into or wonder about?
I think that you don't really have to wonder about stuff. I think it's fair to raise an eyebrow sometimes at this stuff, particularly like the groin situation. And I've talked to the Blazers in the front office about the thing, and tongue in cheek, but also seriously. I've been told that they will look at everything. They will look at their training regimens. They'll look at their dietitians. They'll look at how they diagnose and what they treat and how they treat it, and whether it's in their diagnosis or not, or maybe it's just bad luck, or there's a million other things that kind of feed into that. And it's like, but they're not sitting there like, freaking out about it, but they're going to evaluate that as they do with everything. But it was a crappy situation having Shea go down, and that's why I think it gets amplified.
Yeah.
But kind of going down the list of guys, I asked Malcolm Brogdon at exit interviews how he was doing. He said he's not 100%. He's progressing. He said if the season kind of would have gone on for a little bit longer, he thinks he would have made a return. I was told they were trying to ramp him up so that he could return about a month ago. I had heard that he was going to try and get back out on the floor. That didn't happen. JG is okay. I haven't heard anything about him. He had the back issues. There's a question in the mailbag. I guess I'll address it right now. Jeremy was not at exit interviews. He was excused for personal reasons, but as it pertains to that, there wasn't anything nefarious.
It's not team related.
Yeah, everything is good, but he was excused for the day.
Okay.
So that's where we're at with that. And again, as far as health, I haven't heard any changes there. Again, knock on all the wood. DA healthy, Ant healthy. Again, like kind of going into the summer. Talking to Shea. Shea told me.
I mean, he was ramping back up.
Yeah, he told me before his exit interview. I was like, "How far away are you?" He said probably just a couple weeks before being able to do like full contact, like all the time. So he's gonna be okay. Trying to think what other injuries. Rob's the interesting one. Time Lord. He was very evasive about committing to anything this summer. And I think a big part of that was how scared he is of the knee. Obviously, I've had my injuries as well, and Rob and I have talked about that part of it and the mental stuff that kind of goes along with it. And just through some discussions with him throughout the season, I feel pretty comfortable saying that mentally and emotionally it messed him up.
How does it not, given his career so far?
And he's at that age, like we're, again, two different worlds, military versus, NBA millions, but things got altered pretty seriously for him, and expectations, and kind of like it's a bit of a crossroads for him. And I think that's more pressing for him to make sure that his mind and kind of body line up with his emotions and his mentality before he makes any kind of return. Yeah. So, but for everything I was told and everything he told me, he's progressing really well.
Well, that's good to hear because, he's somebody that, and look, you can certainly pick other athletes or players in this league and throughout our lives, but he's definitely one of those players that, like, when you watch him, it's crystal clear what kind of impact player he is.
He's the defensive player of the year when he's on the floor.
Like, he's an all-defensive player, who's competing for Depoy. Now, Victor's probably going to win Depoy for 10 straight years, but Bob is one of those, like, if he's in any era or generation, like, that dude matters a great deal. So I don't know how it doesn't with some of these players mess them up. I think you saw that a little bit from Clay this year, right? Clay lost a step, wasn't kind of the same player, went through his slumps, and I remember seeing his video in a locker room where it looked like he was borderline going to cry because he wasn't in the closing lineup for the Warriors. So the best of the people in this league, it messes them up mentally. And Rob is definitely a really talented player with big impact.
Yeah.
But his career is just, he cannot stay healthy. So it's really unfortunate. I hope he can stay healthy from here on out. But how does it not mess somebody up mentally?
Yeah.
I think that's impossible.
Yeah, and so that's the question mark, I think. Love the guy. And even though he wasn't playing, when he came back around the team after being kind of
Seemed like a good dude around the team.
like everyone talked about how important and how just prominent his voice was. Like when he spoke up, like people were like, and he actually, I think he mentioned it in exit interviews, like my voice carries real weight, and it does. Like he's been there, done that kind of a guy, and his talent is incredibly high, and it matches, the physique, and when he does speak up, guys listen. Like it was really interesting to just kind of see that. Other injuries on the team, I think that about covers it. To Chris, everybody's good there. Scoot had a little bit of a groin thing that obviously bothered him throughout the season. I think everything's okay there. I don't foresee and I haven't heard anything about him also needing that surgery. Please, for the love of God, no.
The last thing they could deal with right now.
Good
honestly.
God. But yeah, I think otherwise they're going into the summer pretty healthy. So
they're in a weird spot, Danny, because, I jokingly, but like seriously commend you for going to all of the stuff. Mm-hmm. And it is a grind. I think part of it, though, and you'd have to speak on it, like part of it is such a weird season in they're not having success. They're dealing with all of these dumb, random injuries. Guys can't, build chemistry together. Fans upset by coaching, and that becomes a debate. But there's something, I think, at the core where it does become a grind for people like you and Sean and et cetera. But because of how, I don't know, mellow or vibey the locker room kind of was, like listening to Tease today was one for me that like just listening to him talk and how calm and kind of present and thoughtful. Jeremy's probably the same way. I know you've talked about Malcolm behind the scenes, like Ant. Obviously, we know Ant's pretty chill. Scoot seems like a young, goofy, fun guy. Chris was great.
Yeah.
We talked to him about a week and a half ago. As hard as it is, and as unsuccessful as they were from a record standpoint, I feel like covering it's a little easier when you have down-to-earth, mellow guys that aren't complete douchebags.
It was a great
locker
room.
Talk with you.
It was a great locker room. I mean, I've been there before every single game talking to guys, basketball and life. We'll talk Chris about golf, Scoot about whatever. DA will come around the corner singing something. To break up the rhythm of the game or of the night. There'll always be some random topic. Before Malcolm went down, he would always kind of roll his eyes at whatever dumb thing that the kids were doing. Tease and Jeremy are like a buddy cop movie. Like those two are inseparable. It was really interesting to watch because they're very unique people, and Tease would always have something wildly interesting to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was a book he was reading or a painting he remembered, or there was something about talking about playing instruments one day, and somebody mentioned something about a cello. And I had just come across somebody on TikTok who was like remaking or doing covers of like popular pop and rock songs on a cello and singing over the top of them. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. And I showed him to him, and it went down this whole like road about how he wish he would have, gotten more into music as a kid and what he wanted to do more of, and how like it was just. Next thing you know, it's like 20 minutes later. You know what I mean? You're like, holy crap,
For sure.
But those are the kind of things like that was normal. It was very normal. Now it's always funny. The young guys, they're like this, head down.
In the phone.
Yep.
DMs, Snapchat, TikToks. All day. Yeah.
Just buried in it. So you got to pull them out of that a little bit. But it was interesting. That was always the takeaway. And whether it was intentional or not, and I think T said this today in the exit interviews, they really did put together a good locker room. Like they genuinely got along, and you can feel that, because when you don't, that's evident too.
Well, I think we can get into the exit interview stuff, season review type stuff, because that's kind of what today really was, right? You heard from the players. We heard from Joe. We heard from Chauncey. There's some stuff, obviously we got some questions kind of related to some of this stuff where obviously health was a big part, but we also talked about it, as you mentioned at the top of the pod, that like we knew they weren't going to be good. What I find interesting, I don't know where you'd want to go with some of this stuff, whether that's the development, young guys feeling like they walked away with positives. Like Jabari seemed like he was pretty high on how his season went.
Mm-hmm.
Two, obviously suffering the injury, and he struggled from three, but he played a lot of minutes. He showed us what he was defensively. I think he felt pretty positive about it. Scoot ended on a pretty good high in the last like 15, 16, 18 games.
Mm-hmm.
But also you had like, we have this weird, I don't know, situation where the noise is kind of like, how can we be better? But also like, we know this is a developmental stage. Like there is kind of this weird juxtaposition, I think, within the fan base and just kind of what it feels like right now, evaluating the team from a talent standpoint, but also what the future may or may not be holding.
Yeah, and I think it's a larger issue in that this fan base wants everything. They want I want young, exciting, fun players, but I also want them to be good now. And it's like it's a juxtaposition that doesn't exist. Like you can't have that. If you're young, you're gonna be bad. That's the reality of this, and that's kind of what we talked about so much going into the season, and they ended up exactly where I thought they'd end up. I said 23 wins on the season. Got 21. This isn't like ringing my own horn or anything, but it's like this is what rebuilding teams do. And everybody wants to talk about, I want to see Shaden kind of work this out. I want to see Scoot work this out. I want to see two. I don't want to give any of those guys up, but I also want to get better. But also I want Cooper Flagg, but also I want to be in the playoffs. And it's like, there's so much noise. And I can't imagine how much it sucks to an extent to be a GM of a tanking team. Like it's probably amazing and awful at the same time, but the reward is, you got to go full, crawling through, 5 miles of shit or a mile of shit to get to the end, go full Andy Dufresne.
The 500 yards of 500 shit.
500 yards of shit. Yeah. Like that's what tanking is.
I would actually add there may not be an end to the 500 yards.
That's the thing is,
though,
you might get to the end, and that light that you see at the very beginning may just be a light at the end of the pipe where it tees off into 500 yards left and right of more shit because you didn't find the guy. And that's the thing that's so difficult about this, is that none of this is given. Just because you tank doesn't mean you're going to get the guy. And I think that's going to be interesting. It's like, because we'll talk about this draft here in a little bit. There's going to be a guy or two out of it, but nobody knows who that guy is. And anybody who tells you they do is full of shit. Like I just spent the week with 24 NBA executives. And the number of opinions I got on this draft are across the board.
Did you? So I want to get back into something you just kind of said, but I want to ask you on the talking to the NBA folks. I don't know if you'd want to go by percentage or just total bodies. What was this draft is meh to crap versus like you actually heard or found that more people maybe than you thought were like, I think it could be a sneaky draft. Like, what is that? Where was that tilt for you? Okay.
Didn't exist.
Just
not one.
I'll
tell you. I'll tell you this. There's always one. And one GM has told me, it's a rule. Was it a rule of 6 or rule of 7? Okay. There's always 6 guys or 7 guys in every draft. Like
I tend to agree with that.
But there's like varying levels of guy,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And I think that's true even in like the worst drafts. Like that's totally fine. Like the guy in 2013 is Giannis, but you've got CJ and you've got Gobert. Like you just gonna go to the list. You're like, okay, yeah, no, solid pro, but it may not be in the lottery.
Right.
And that's very much like everybody believes that there's a lot of role players in this draft. No one believes there's a star. It's an easily identifiable star, and it's like it's very interesting to kind of see where that ends up. Like, I asked 10 different GMs over the past month now. Is there a guy in this class that you want to give the number one salary slot to? 3 of them were like, one guy? One guy? Yeah.
Was it a name or just a one guy?
No. I didn't want to, like, I was just like, is there a guy?
Yeah.
And the other ones were like looking at it going, probably not. And that's less that it's these guys are bad, just not the fact that they're not the stars that you usually hope to get in the top 3 to top 5.
Sure.
And so that'll shape kind of the discussions that we kind of have going forward.
Okay, now I want to go back to the one thing that you mentioned, because I've experienced it a little bit in my personal life with what you're describing of just wanting nice things, right?
Sure.
Our whole podcast was started and we jokingly said, we don't get nice things. People want nice things. But I think what you described, like, I've heard multiple interviews and press conferences. You're kind of describing Chauncey to me, like playoffs, play in, good enough, young guys, development. Like he kind of feels a little of that. Like he wants both worlds to exist. He sees the team as a play-in, maybe a playoff type deal, where he has these nice young pieces that are just going to keep this thing humming along. And that was kind of one of my takeaways today is like, he talked about how he's gotten better. He talked about development, but he also talked about, I think this team can take a big step next year and be a play-in team, assuming we stay healthy. And I don't know, the little bit of what you described there was, I certainly have heard Blazer fans with that. It feels like I'm hearing that a little bit from the coach. Like he kind of wants both worlds. And it's interesting to me that's kind of his position, his viewpoint.
Here's the thing about Chauncey and really every coach in the NBA. There isn't a single coach in the NBA that wants to coach a tanking team. No one. Not one. Not one enjoys it. No one wants to stack losses. Look at Brett Brown. Where's he right now?
Not in the league.
I mean, he pops up on an assistant coach's bench,
but not as a head coach.
That's what I'm saying. Like he's not anybody who's been that guy who's like, you're gonna take this on the chin. They don't get the next job. When they move on, that's what they do. They go to the next guy.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that's how this is done. And Chauncey, I think fairly, when he signed on with Neil, and again, fairness, Neil is who hired him, not Joe. Mm-hmm. When Neil brought him in, Chauncey was coming in to coach a more veteran-laden team.
That was a playoff team. They had lost, and they shouldn't have lost. Well, you can debate that, but they lost. They ran it back. Chauncey came in, and it was like, this is going to be fixed, and this will be okay. And I'm not saying this is all Chauncey, but clearly from that point, this has not gone that direction.
Yeah, and I think fairly to him, he wants an opportunity to coach a team that's better. Every coach wants to coach a better team. Nobody wants to coach kids. And I don't think that's anything negative about Chauncey at all. I think that's a very universally held belief. Do you think Pop wanted to do that?
For Tim Duncan and Wemby, yes.
I don't think. I don't think
exceptions to. Well,
I don't think he wanted to. Also, Tim was a year, and you shut it down like kind of a situation.
No, I know that's what I'm saying is, and I think San Antonio's clearly had their problems prior to Wemby.
Yes, but I'm saying, do you think he wanted to do that? No,
not
not at all.
That's why I kept running it back with DeRozan and Derek White. He was totally happy being, even if it was the bottom tier of the West, being a playoff team.
Having good vets, having a young guy or two, and like being scrappy. Because you can talk yourself. Brett, I am not kidding. Somebody on one of the NBA podcasts said this a couple weeks ago too. Like, you go into a season, there are dudes on teams that are not good who are like, no, I think this is gonna be our year. Like, we can really sneak up on play. Like, they believe that.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where you just kind of go, yeah. And so Chauncey just wants a puncher's chance. And I don't think what he's asking is unfair per se, but the context matters. Because the context is this team was stripped down to the studs last year coming into the season. Everybody who's sitting like, I think they could be a sneaky playoff team. No, they couldn't. No. The plan was always this year to be a tanking team. Because there's no reason to commit to it. And honestly, I think next year the plan is to be a tanking team. Because
yeah.
Well, look, I mean, Joe said it. They don't have the talent. Joe said it today.
He didn't say we're going to be a tanking team, but he said it without saying it, I thought.
He said everything but we're going to be a tanking team.
Yes.
We don't have the talent. That's what he said.
But look.
How do you acquire talent? Through the draft, through free agency,
Portland,
and through trade.
Draft.
So
Yes.
primarily it has to be through the draft.
Yes.
And if you get a couple guys down the road, then perhaps you can trade.
Well, we'll get to the draft part because you just watched a few of these dudes that are going to be in that draft, not this season, but the next season. And there's a reason that there's so much excitement for it. But it'd be a wild experience to think and tell yourself, this team could be a playoff team. And then they finish dead last in the conference. That's got to be a wild ride for some of those fans who have mentally have to gone from that to kind of what it is. I think the difficult thing would be any sentiment, whether it's a pundit you love or the head coach himself. It just it would not make any logical sense to be bad like this year. This is their worst season since 05-06, record-wise, I think, right? 21 wins?
Yeah.
It would not make any sense to pivot and say, no, we want to be the 9th seed. We want to be a 7 seed. Yeah. It makes zero. You cannot like whatever about this organization. I don't care. From a building standpoint, it fundamentally would make no logical sense to suddenly care so much that you have to be a play-in team for your ego's sake, or to just say, hey, look at us. We're making ground on things. The reality is you wouldn't be. You would just be actually hurting yourself long term. So it's like without a doubt.
Also, you could maybe say you got a little more money in your pocket. And before everybody says, oh, this ownership, I don't care.
We can't do anything about that.
Not only that, it's like there's nothing that Phil Knight or any other owner does that comes in that solves the talent deficit. The fact that Jody Allen hasn't spent, big time air quotes, because she has spent. They're losing millions of dollars on a G League team. They built a brand new kitchen in the practice facility. They're $200,000 under the luxury tax. Like, they're spending. There's so many other stupid things that people get mad about with regards to ownership. And I'm sitting here looking at the Detroit Pistons right now going, oh my God, what are they doing? Like, as
Maybe
far as
hiring Neil Olshey.
As far as dysfunctional, that it's so difficult to kind of figure that part out without talking to people, where you're just like, okay, this is where it's at. They don't want a bad TV deal. They don't want to be bad in the sense of like a poorly built team. They want to build something sustainable so that it can take off, because they don't want to be the Hornets. They don't want to be what the Kings were for 17 years, because you can't take the shortcut unless you have a star. And we talked about this with Dame. Unless you have a star, and this is like during the whole Dame saga. What was the thing that we kept saying? You're going to miss Dame on the floor. You're going to miss Dame off the floor a lot more because of everything else that he was responsible for. And so they have to strip it down, and they did. And they have to nail something, whether it's a draft pick or a trade going forward. And so you go into this season and somebody says in the comment, that's not true, exclamation point. Cronin said they need to give the young guys, no, that's what I'm saying. Cronin said they needed to give the young guys more support by getting more shooting and playmaking. Yeah, they can. You swap out veterans that give them those things at the same time. That's all that is. You give a little bit more lineup staggering. You have more shooting and less non-shooting, as it were. You know? That's, I don't think it's a coincidence that Scoot started to look relatively, more effective early in the season when he moved to the bench when he was playing with WAP. Because he was playing with a little bit more floor spacing, a little bit more understanding. Like those things kind of like, I will be shocked if the core of this team right now, Ant, Scoot, Shea, Tumani, Ayton, Jeremy, if that kind of version of the team is back next year. So I think Malk, you can obviously make a very logical excuse or reasoning for trading away. I think Tease, one way or the other, is fine. I think you can make the argument for Jeremy if it makes sense. I don't think you have to make the decision on Ant or Scoot yet, but you can kind of figure that out. But I think you look at that kind of core group going into next season, I don't think that there's a way that you could surround them with enough talent to like really fundamentally change things with what they have. It's just going to be a different version of not being good.
Right.
And it's not just, you can't just look at it through a Blazers-centric lens. There's the Western Conference. Who's going to be bad out of the Western Conference next year?
The only one, I was thinking about this too the other day because they're last. San Antonio's going to be better. Victor's just insane.
San Antonio might be
Utah?
in the playoffs on his back alone.
I don't think they'll be as bad as, I don't think there's going to be a team as bad as Portland, but if you're asking in the West, what team? I'm kind of wondering, like, what's Utah doing?
Sure. And then what
Utah's
they're doing
in a weird
is
spot.
they're waiting on Luka. That's what they're waiting on.
Utah?
Yeah. They have all the assets in the world, and if he asks out, boop.
Oh, don't go to Utah.
Look, I'm just saying, that's what they're holding out for. What does Danny Ainge do? Trade for stars.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Sounds about white.
That Doncic would go hard in Salt Lake City.
Oh my God, dude! They'd may throw a championship parade.
A billion platinum.
I mean, oh my Lord! I mean, imagine telling somebody John Stockton's going to turn 6'8" at some point. He's going to become your face of the franchise. They would go nuts for that. Let me ask you this though. I don't know if you had big grand takeaways from anybody or any one part of media day. I think I'm putting myself in I will be a little surprised if Ant is on the roster after the summer. And I totally understand everything you can lay out in front of me.
That quote is gaining a lot of traction.
It is.
And
I've been asking this all year. That dude is good. That dude can help a good team and situation. And there's an obvious team that everybody and their mom points to. And I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what the grand plan from Joe is. He's right. Year 7. Like, this is
crazy
for
that
me
he's
to
in
start
7.
doing this.
I don't think it's reached boiling point with him yet. I don't think it's there yet. I think
summer's long, Daniel.
Yes. Well, on both sides of that argument.
No, I know.
On both sides of that argument. But I think that's kind of the vein of kind of like people were like really latching on to the. I always love how which quotes like catch fire.
You knew that one was going to blow up when you sent it.
I didn't think so.
Really?
Yeah.
He basically said, I don't want to lose anymore. And everybody here, they're the brain, knows they're going to lose. It's like, and they have a point guard. And he started playing well. Like, I don't think it makes sense. I just don't think it makes sense. I don't.
Yeah, I didn't think it was like that over the top from him. I think he was frustrated. I think he was frustrated with the injuries. I think he was frustrated that he was trying to learn to play the point guard position while the franchise had another point guard.
Yes.
I think like he's just frustrated. Like
it's been a weird start to a career for sure.
Yeah. And I think, he gets buried behind, Dame and CJ, and then he kind of comes on and then fades to the back, and then Carmelo comes in and jacks 20 shots a night from him for a year and a half. Then COVID through all of that, and then
trade CJ, play next to Dame. Wait, what?
Plays relatively well at the 2, but you're still like, it's pretty small. But then he gets a chance at the 1, but then his time at the 1 is kind of offset by a guy who's can't shoot, and he's trying to learn things while Scoot's trying to learn things, and I think that it just was not a fun season for him. I think that's genuinely where he's at. I don't think he's forcing anyone's hand yet.
No.
But if you told me that Ant wasn't on the team next year, would I be shocked? No. Because what did we say when they drafted Scoot? They don't have to make a decision until next summer. But it was probably going to be by the trade deadline that's coming
of the next year,
that
season.
They would make a decision.
Right.
And if you said, they bumped that up 6 months, would I be shocked by that? No. I'd be a little surprised, but not shocked.
I just think you're sitting poolside, you just trained for 4 or 5 hours, you're relaxing with your homies, and you get a little tequila, and it's like, yo, man, you should be on these teams. You are good. And like, I don't mean to say this as like some outward big critical thing of the organization. They've paid the dude. They've shown him love. They've elevated. They've given him some chances. But it's also, as you just rattle it through, it's been weird. And I think that guy loves to play basketball. So like he would probably say, oh, no, man, I've had like 200 plus games that I've had fun. But like full out being Anfernee Simons on the court, what has that guy had in his career in Portland? Probably 12 great games where he's like, I can do this. Yeah. But then somebody comes back from an injury, or he's backing up somebody, or they sign
some sort of disruption. Yeah, I would 100% agree.
So I just think you get to the summer, you start training. These guys all kind of train. There's like little pods where they train together. There's like 6 guys per trainer. And the noise starts and the talking starts, and like
it's Miami/Orlando, New York, and LA. Like those are the runs.
Those are the ones. Yes, absolutely. So. And it's like, yo, look what I just did. That situation versus my situation is drastically different. It makes sense, and I know how he said it. I'm a little surprised. You're surprised that your quote went viral, but it makes a lot of sense why he would say what he said. And I don't think he meant it in like some threatening manner. I think he's just being matter of fact. I can win. I want to win. I'm ready to win. And this is not that situation.
Yeah, and for those wondering, Ant said, we don't want to have another year like this. My 6th year is done now. Going into year 7, I want to have the opportunity to win. I'll tell you this. This is not and this isn't to dismiss it. This is what every 24 to 28-year-old player in the NBA wants. I shouldn't say every. Everyone
there's a couple
who's not. There's a couple who's like, I'm happy cashing checks.
Yes.
Totally fine.
That's all I need.
Totally fine.
Yeah. CTC.
But 24 to 29-year-old, this is what they all want. Because this is what gets you that last contract. You go play for a winner and show that you can win in a plus environment. That's what gets you that 4-year, 5-year, $150, $200 million deal. That's what it does.
Yeah.
And so they all want that chance. They all want that opportunity because your earning window is finite. And you'd be like, oh, it sounds selfish to tie all the money. Money's a hell of a motivator, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Hell of a motivator. So I'm not surprised that Ant said it. But I also don't think it was a demand of any sort yet. TikTok? But I think they'll definitely have discussions about it. Like with all things, I think both sides would be much more comfortable putting it off.
Mm-hmm.
If they did have that discussion.
Yeah.
I think that's ultimately where that falls. So
Do you have, if I was to ask you what side more likely broaches the topic if it is to come up this summer, would you lean Ant?
it's always the player.
Okay.
Always the player. Even if organizations are talking about it.
Unless you're the Buffalo Bills, and then it's like, get the hell out of here, Dave.
Yeah. Unless you're a complete piece of shit. Yeah.
Right.
Like, that's kind of where it's at.
I just think it's interesting, Danny. I know you want to get to some other stuff. I want to get your Hoop Summit thoughts, some incoming freshmen that are going to be in that next year's draft.
Sure. We can talk about this draft. We can talk about, of course, we can talk about Chauncey too, because that's another one that went nuts.
No, we can talk about Chauncey in a sec. I wanted to kind of just finish up on the whole being a general manager in a tank, and I've always agreed, like, you don't want to be what the Pistons are right now. This is weird and gross, and you can feel bad about your Blazers, but like there is a level to it for sure. But I think the difficult thing, and this is part of what you're, I think, talking about, is they don't get the ping pong ball this year. They don't get it next year. And it's like, if you don't hit on that pick, you're not the Pistons, but the Kings is like, oh my God, this is 7 years now. We haven't made the play. Like it's that finite too.
That's what this is, and that's what people don't realize was that landing Damian Lillard where they did, when they did, while also having LaMarcus already saved their ass.
Oh, 100%.
And it was there's so much. I shouldn't say it's so much luck. There's a lot of luck in that because Chad Buchanan did a ton of work going into that draft, and it's been well documented just how nails they were on drafting Damian Lillard. And I've talked to other executives around the league. Dame's workouts with Portland were otherworldly. There was like 5 other workouts where teams were like, Jesus. Like he just had an insane level workout. So I have a reeling suspicion that as much as like Portland was the great opportunity for him, had the supporting cast, I have a reeling suspicion he would have been great everywhere. But you just need that luck. You need a team to be dumb and take Thomas Robinson.
Yes.
Like you need teams to like, you
need a team to take 2 point guards back to back so you can take Steph Curry.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you need to have the foresight to be like, if I squint, I can see a better player. I don't know how good, but I tell you what, the star point guard that we have that everybody loves, trade him and keep the skinny kid whose ankles are made of glass.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's like everybody wants to talk about light years and how well run an organization is and da. The Spurs were one ping pong ball off of Wemby.
I know.
Like, he's a trailblazer. Then what are we talking about right now?
They're the worst team in the West by a galaxy.
Let's say the Spurs land 4th. They fall back.
Mm.
And they're running Jeremy Sohan and Amen Thompson. They're weird as shit and they're a lot of fun, but they can't hit a shot.
They might be fun.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, but that's like, that's my point.
Yeah,
like
the Galaxy Light Years thing, they also drafted James Wiseman. So, like, yeah.
That's just, it's just, there's so much that goes into this. And look, I mean, I'm sure the Blazers front office is looking at this stuff and going, we don't have an infinite amount of time. I really think that, like, the screws are on this summer to be like, okay, here's the framework of what we want to do, and it's to be bad, but be bad with a purpose. Continue developing Scoot, continue developing Shaden, continue developing whichever wing kind of shows up in camp.
Murray, whatever, yeah.
2, like, whoever, like, shows like they've taken a little step.
Mm-hmm.
Continue seeing what you can get out of DA, and then whatever draft pick you get, or if you make a trade for another younger player in the league, then you go from there and you're like, okay, like we'll get to March and then we're going to go, we're going to crash this thing into the side of the cliff because we need one more guy and we don't have anything else to go get that guy with. And maybe you don't end up with one of the 3 worst records in the league. Maybe you're 4th, maybe you're 5th, but you're like, hey, there's a Ace Bailey, there's a Cooper Flagg, you just kind of go down a list of guys. You're like, okay, I can get one more dude in here. It may not be LeBron James, but it's a guy who like we look at and go, this guy could be a star. And I think that's so much about what all of this stuff is about. Is that I love Ant, I love Scoot, I love Shea, I love all of these guys as players. They're fun, they're awesome in their own little ways. They're great people. Like I like talking to these kids. But I've had these conversations and I flat out said, like, you guys need a dude. And they all know that. They are not immune to that.
No, I know. We're not going to publicly either acknowledge any of that
either.
That's just something that, internally they know.
And they all think, like, I could be more too, though. Because that's, like, how you get there.
Sure.
So, but I feel like we're beating this horse to death with like, well, maybe they should do this and maybe they should do this. Maybe they should suck for another year.
Yeah.
Maybe they should suck for another year, as painful as it is. And if you have to tune out. But I tell you what, when you come back and all of a sudden they've got 2 or 3 guys and it makes more sense and they're better and they're growing together, you're going to look at this and go, shit, this is a lot more fun. Like then you start not just selling hope, but there is hope. And I think that's the big thing.
And I think, you and I wouldn't say like debated much, but like we would go back and forth. And sometimes you get this with young players, right? Like Ant Edwards is a good one. You can feel how you feel about it. People in Minnesota saw him play. And they went, I don't know, man, this kid's got a little something. There's something different about this.
Sure.
And took a couple years, but you surround it. You take a big trade. That didn't work. Look at you guys. Well, now look at them now.
Number one seed in the Western Conference. I'm sorry, they fell 3. OKC got number 1.
Half game out of the first.
Yes, the final day twisted everything up. I forgot about that.
And so, like, even if you were to get, like, the hypothetical, you named Ace Bailey and Cooper Flagg, we're just throwing 2 names out. You get one of those dudes, you get a kind of general feel of, like, oh, yeah, this looks like it could connect. Now, it may not result in wins instantly, but it is something that, like, if you tune out next year, which...
Look at Orlando. Look at Cleveland. Like, look at this, like the ascension of young. Look at OKC, because that's the model that everybody wants to talk about. It's like, yes, if you
they
trade
also got SGA in a trade. Like,
yeah, if you trade for a guy who turns into an MVP, yes, that's a huge kickstart. Yeah. But yeah, that's what so much of this is, and I don't like to boil it down to something so simple, but like, there's only so many avenues, and if you don't want to pursue them because you don't want to admit to yourself that you just want to, like, I want to taste the relatively good basketball. Mm-hmm. I don't blame you. You're just weak. Suck it up.
Well, we only had a 22-year run of making the playoffs.
I know. And it's like, This is the 500 yards of shit. Like, you're not even through the tube yet, guys. You worn out on the other side.
Not even halfway, man.
No, and that's the thing. It's like, it's gonna go on for another year, unless something drastic happens. I don't think that's on the table right now. I think there can be some relatively like bigger moves with like bigger names on the roster, but I don't think that changes beyond that.
You went to Hoop Summit. You were at the practices. What were you laughing about something?
Yeah, I got a text that made me laugh.
Would you want to share it, or is it private?
No, it's a private one. Yeah,
All right.
Just made me laugh.
I hope it's somebody just sending you a photo of them in shit crawling. Right? If only you know, brother. If only you knew. What was your? Tell us what you thought. You saw the man up close. I know there's other players, but like the man is Flagg. Capture the flag is what we're running with next year. What were your thoughts of him up close? You went to the practices. You went to the games. What was some takeaways from Hoop Summit? What could you tell us peasants who don't have quite the credential and access as one Daniel Marang?
That's right, peasants. Keep up. But no, in all seriousness, P's I've run out of things to say. I've run out of things to say about him.
God, it's good when it lives up to the hype, isn't it?
Oh, brother. It's so good. It's so good. So if you watch the game, you saw him finish with 19 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists on 8 of 11 shooting, 1 of 2 from 3. And you saw him do it in a manner that was just like, sure. Like, it was simple and effective. And he didn't force the action. And at the end of the game, you look at the box score, wildly efficient, incredibly productive. And you're going on both ends of the floor. During practice all week, his competitive level, his competitive fire was at 10 the entire time. Like,
I'd love to hear that.
They were running through drills, first shell, then live 5-on-5, and king of the court, but defensively. So you win or stays on. You get to stop, you stay on, then you move from defense to offense. And the offense you can kind of pile it on. They were up like 7-1 against like the 3 units, and coach goes, all right, next drill wins, and the other team got a deflection, and we weren't sure who it went off of. The coach goes, all right, you guys win, the other team. Coop loses his shit. No, wait, no, run it back right now, run it back. Like, he was not about to lose on a technicality. And that's how he was the entire week. He would refuse to lose anything. So I think he fell asleep in a scrimmage back door, and Ace Bailey, the number 2 recruit in the class. It's going to be fun to watch these two go back and forth. I've got the video. I'll post it probably after the show. He back cuts and catches a lob and throws it down. This is the only time I saw it happen during practice all week. Coop immediately looks at the inbender. Hands up. Give me the ball. Brings the ball up the court. Gives it up. Rolls through. Relocates to the corner. Immediately off a little pin down. Calls for it, catches it, knocks down a 3. And then just does his little back pedal, staring at Ace the whole way.
Oh, my God.
And so this went on the entire week. So just dogging him per 36 is at 1,000. All of the intangibles. 6'8 plus. I think he's more 3 than 4, but I think if he grows, gets a little bit bigger, you can legitimately play as a 4, but he's so good. He's so good. Ace Bailey, 6'8", wing that just effortless shot making. Effortless. Unbelievable athlete. When he wants to elevate on his jumper, it's like Martell Webster.
Yeah.
Like, he gets like 2 feet off the ground, and you're just sitting there going, yep, that guy you can run your entire offense through. Like, I could very easily see him being like a number 1 option on a team.
How was he? Like, you mentioned Cooper taking some of that personal, and like I couldn't be more aroused as a basketball fan. How was Ace Bailey though back? Like, was he the same or like a little less?
Oh yeah, no, they were about that life.
It was dog versus dog.
They were both about that life. They both knew who was in the building.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not talking about me for everybody's wondering. I'm talking about the various NBA GMs, scouts, and evaluators.
That's an NBA draft combine is what that is.
There's 13 GMs in the building.
Yeah.
Like, I was going through, I was like, yeah, okay. Like, I guess technically 14 if you want to count Portland's, because Joe was in his office watching.
I picture Joe just like going like this.
Peeking through the blinds.
Open.
No, it's nice to have home court. So you can go sit in your office and handle business while you work. But yeah, I mean, those two, they just went at it, man. They just went at it. VJ Edgecombe, who's going to Baylor. Again, not really an interest of the Blazers because he's a 6'4" guard, but buddy, somebody's going to get a hell of a guard. The other guard in there that was incredible was Boogie Fland. It reminded me of Darius Garland with a sprinkle of De'Aaron Fox.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's very good. Asa Newell, he was incredibly effective on the glass. He's a really hyper twitchy 4 who can knock down shots. Like Trey Johnson. Okay, so if you go back to my tweets from the 2017 Hoop Summit.
You have 6th grade scouting reports on some of these guys?
No. Gary Trent Jr.
Okay.
Watching him straight out of high school, I said, I don't know what else this guy can do, but I can tell you right now, watching him shoot and how he moves, he is going to shoot the living hell out of the ball, not in college, but in the NBA. This is a 40% three-point shooter right now. He's the only guy I've ever watched the hoop summit and been like, don't change anything about your jump shot. Not one thing. You are an elite shooter right now. You're great. Fantastic. In this class, Trey Johnson, who's going to Texas, same thing. Just shoots the living hell out of the ball with a lightning quick release. And he's about 6'6". Then you've got Dylan Harper, who's going to Rutgers with Ace Bailey, who's a 6'6" point guard, who just plays at his own pace. He's Ron Harper's son. All of this to say is like getting through this. It's like there's so many dudes in this 2025 draft, and it's such a problem that Portland is picking high in the 2024 draft and not the 2025 draft. It's like, ay.
Let me ask you this, because you made us all like, we're drooling right now.
Yeah.
Okay. I know it's a year away. We're drooling. They had 21 wins this year. What's the win total? What do you think their win total is going to be next year? Same? Slightly better? Do they hit the tank a little harder and say, yeah, go ahead, Scoot and Shaden, lead us, please? Like, I'm just wondering, do you, I know the top three, same odds, all that stuff.
Yeah, right now I would say probably about the same.
About the same, okay.
We'll revisit this as, we're getting ready for the season to start and what changes they've made.
Sure.
But, yeah,
if this class is as good as you're making it sound, you have to be this bad.
Yeah. And
you can't miss this
and these guys aren't, and I don't want to seem like these guys are guarantees, because none of these guys,
none of them.
Wemby was the only one. Remember the things I was saying about Wemby?
Oh, him and LeBron are the only ones. Dude.
It's like absolutely unequivocally generational. There's nothing about him that's, I'm like, oh, I wonder. No, didn't wonder a bit. Like,
no.
Cooper, like, is he going to run your offense? No. Is he going to be the best number 2 in the entire NBA? Yeah. Yeah, he's got that potential. Like, is it a guarantee? No, but he has that potential. Like, you're talking about in 2025 going forward, my comp for him has continually been, like, more edgy Andrei Kirilenko, which in today's NBA is an all-NBA player.
Yeah.
Like, that's the kind of potential I look at him with. Like, if you wanted to say he's got some Sean Merriam to him, okay. Like, that's the kind of guy a Hall of Famer. Like, those are the kind of guys. It's insane.
Is there one that you didn't mention that people are keeping an eye on and saying, I want to see how he develops. He could be in this conversation in a couple of years.
Yeah, in 2 years, AJ DeBonsa, who played in this game. He's not in this draft class. He's 2026, and he's surpassed Cam Boozer, Carlos Boozer's kid, in the 2026 draft. Like, he was a dude. He had a great post-game press conference afterwards. He basically flat out said, I want all the smoke.
Wow.
Yeah. And by the way, I think he just turned 17. And he's 6'7", 6'8", probably 220 pounds, 215 pounds.
Good
just
Lord.
Built like a brick truck, gets wherever he wants to. Mid-range pull-ups, finishing at the rim, just, whoo, buddy.
4 straight years of tanking can build a hell of a team, my man. Hell of a team.
It's what the Celtics did.
Yeah, it is what the Celtics did. There's no doubt.
So,
do you have any Chauncey thoughts? You'd mentioned Chauncey earlier. You sounded like somebody wanted to sound off on Chauncey.
I mean,
I will say, can I just say,
go,
real
go,
quick
go.
before you sound off? I want you to sound off. I can't pretend to know inner workings of anything. I'm not, I don't go to this stuff the way that you do. You're there. It seemed a little off just in the messaging. Now, you can certainly say every coach wants to be good. Nobody wants to be bad. I understand that. It was a little, well, we got to develop. And it was like, hey, I hope we can win next year. And it's like, it seemed a little just a scooch off was my takeaway.
I don't think you're wrong.
General manager.
I think that's both sides trying to put pressure. in different ways on each other. And this happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. You know, this is not an unusual thing. Like, every coach wants more nice things to play with.
Sure.
Big kids at heart. Because there was something Matisse said. Matisse was really good in his press conference.
I thought Tease was the best one at the press conference.
He's so insightful and so thoughtful. He takes his time and he's very measured with everything. And I've always really respected him about that, because there have been times when I've asked him questions, not on the record, just like asking him about stuff. And he'll always come back with some version. Not always, I should say. He very often comes back with some version of, what do you mean by that? Or can you clarify that? Or what are you trying to get to? And like, he's always he's very precise with his words. Mm-hmm. And I thought that what he said today, I want to make sure I get it right, since he is precise with his words. I will be precise with his words. I thought that this was really interesting when he was asked about Chauncey. I think when he stopped a practice or shoot around, you felt grounded. He has an ability to create understanding for players across the board. We have guys who played 10 years and guys that can't buy alcohol. And he has a way of explaining things that everyone else can grasp it. It's really easy to talk big picture and high-level things, but it's the little stuff, and in my experience, he's one of the best I've ever seen to it. That's a really interesting thing for Tish to call out. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And this is the drum that I've been banging with regards to Billups.
Well, he's an intellectual, I think. For that, I believe his mom is in education.
He's
correct?
Named, yes, and he's named after a painter. Like,
but yeah, and I think he put that very interestingly, because I think the way at least is how he comes off to me. When you can reach him intellectually, he notices things like that. Like, oh, look at us. Like, all 10 of us, we're completely linked up and understanding what this guy, like, there's a way of.
He's aware.
And noticing
and present,
like how
and in
somebody
the moment,
communicates.
Yep,
yes.
all those things.
Yes.
And this is, and I don't say this is like this, like, that this is the most important thing and this is what makes Chauncey Billups great. I've said it before. I don't think Chauncey's the best coach. I think he's gotten better, but it's the same thing that I said about Terry. It's a different version of it with Chauncey. If they can relate to the players and the players go out hard for them, those are like the two biggest things you can ask. You can nitpick the other stuff, and you should when winning matters. To me, the whole idea of like they have to fire Chauncey right now. They should fire Chauncey right now. Why? What coach wants to come in knowing that this is a tanking situation? What coach do you want to come in and try to instill whatever he has if he's not the coach that you know for certain? Because if you're firing Chauncey, you're not going out and getting Eric Spoelstra. You're not getting that coach. You're taking a swing on another young coach.
Can I just real quick? There's a report that the Nets are going to hire Budenholzer, and I understand the Nets are not the Blazers. That seems like a really weird, bad situation. At least it was this year.
Who's on that team?
Well, I mean, yeah.
Budenholzer can talk himself into a couple guys on that team.
True. And also, to be fair, Quinn Snyder hasn't gone particularly well in Atlanta for him. And I think Quinn Snyder's a good coach. So.
Also, that's the thing is the whole coaching versus success thing. We don't have to rehash all that. Guess what's going to happen in Atlanta this offseason?
Mm-hmm.
Trae gone. Trae's
Probably.
gone.
Yeah.
I would throw a lot of money on Trae Young being traded. Look, it's coming up. It's coming up zeros on the old roulette table. All right, just saying.
You would be guy to tell me that. I put it all on zeros, and it's like 7.
Let it ride, baby. Let it ride. This is why I don't play roulette or craps. But in both those situations, what do you have? Neither of those are. The Nets can't tank. They can't. They don't have their draft picks. The Hawks gave up their picks down the road to get this DeJounte Murray. They're trying to get those back. So, I think that's That's the thing. And
It'd be funny if San Antonio gave him the picks back to him for Trae Young. Like they just
honestly,
came back.
I think that's what they want. I think that's what they
go.
want. But the thing about this is, like, even if you hate Chauncey, Umar points this out. I'm a big advocate of getting rid of Chauncey, but he ensures us tanking next year for Flag and his guaranteed money. Don't want to pay 2 coaches. I don't think the idea of, like, Chauncey's buyout is insane. He's a first-time head coach. This isn't Greg Popovich money. And for everybody, the Blazers are cheap. Again, they're spending a lot more money than you know about. They've drastically increased their scouting department and stuff they're doing behind the scenes. And yeah, I'm not going to rehash this every single time somebody says Jody Allen's cheap, because it's like, I'm not defending her. You just don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Sorry. Like, I get that one. It makes my eye twitch every time I hear it. I'm like, no, there are organizations in the league that are significantly cheaper. Do I want to see an owner that comes in and just goes, Steve Ballmer, 1,200 toilets? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Did I tell the Ballmer
If
story?
you like that, you go to every game, you probably want your own toilet.
Did I tell you the Ballmer story?
Which one? No.
About the toilets? Okay.
At the new arena?
We're derailing right now because I have to tell you this story.
Okay.
So the Clippers were in town. The Blazers, for that series of games. I get done with the game. I go into the press room, the media room, get my stuff ready, and I look over. For those that don't know, if you're looking at whoever's on the media desk, to the left there's a little hallway where our private media room and there's 2 bathrooms. Just outside the door, right there, is where the visitors' locker room is. Like, it's right there.
Mm-hmm.
I look over and I'm, what the fuck? Steve Ballmer leaning against the wall, man of the people, waiting for the bathroom. Use the everyday gentleman bathroom as opposed to the owner's suite. I was like, does he know about the owner's bathroom? I bet you he doesn't. They come back for the second game, that little 2-game trip. Post game, straight there. There he is again. Legend, leaning up against the wall. Man's worth 40, 50, 60 billion dollars waiting in line. And I was like, good for you, Steve Ballmer. Either you think you're just like everyone else right in this vein, or you don't know about the owner's suite.
I think he does think he's like everybody else until money comes into the equation. He's like, actually, I'm going to be taking this car. You're going to get in that car.
The helicopter
and by
lands.
the way,
all right, see you later. Bye.
I've taken more pisses in those bathrooms than I can count. It's a roll of the dice when you're standing in line.
Woo,
you don't know
buddy.
who's coming out of that thing and what they did. You're just like, can I breathe in here? Yes, I can. Okay, thank you very much. Let's keep it going. Like, it's dicey to use those bathrooms.
It is. But sorry. As it pertains to Billups, I kind of, with, like, my personal view is, you heard the comments that coming out of the press conference, and I will tell you the comments off camera are very much the same from all of the players. And that matters. I'm telling you, look at the Milwaukee Bucks and Adrian Griffin. It matters. I'm telling you, it matters. Now, do I think Chauncey's the one to take them to the promised land? I don't think he's shown that. So if you get to the end of this contract and you kind of go, we're going to move on, I think that's okay. I also think he probably got
a mutual parting of the ways,
is
what you're saying?
Sure, but I also think he probably got a pretty unfair shake. Because he signed up for something that didn't end up being.
Well, you can certainly say that. I think that's a fair thing to say. I think I'd also say you listen to what Neil O'Shea said, and you could have evaluated the roster and saw that they brought something back they shouldn't have brought back and said, I'm going to keep assisting with Ty Lue for one more year. I might get a different gig.
Sure. Absolutely. And again, the responsibility also falls on him. For sure. 100%. I don't disagree with that one bit. I'm not dismissing him or, culpability or whatever it is. But I just don't. I think the most important thing right now for this organization from a coaching standpoint is a coach who has the ear of the players and has done well with developing guys. People were like, oh, so he's ruining Scoot. Where is Scoot from the beginning of the season until now?
Well, I would say that's the biggest compliment he's had at the end of the year. No matter how anybody feels, it's like the one thing you can't point to Scoot You can point to statistics from a full season standpoint, but if you go look at the last 17 games,
the last 15 games, you know what Scoot did? He averaged 19 points, 8 assists, 4 rebounds on 41, 40, 81.
Yeah. Certainly went into the offseason feeling good about himself.
Okay, and now let's talk a look at Shaden last year. Take a look at Ant's growth. Take a look at Tumani's growth. Take a look at Chris Murray's growth. Take a look at Ryan Repair's growth. Who hasn't grown in the last 2 years? Find me the young guy on this team that hasn't grown. Who you're disappointed with what they've done.
I wouldn't say not grown, but if I was to play the game, the only one that would come to my mind on that challenge would be Shaden, but he only played 30 games, so I can't really use it. I just didn't get to see the full sample.
But in that point, okay, then it is official. Jordy Fernandez is the head coach of the Nets, which, yeah, sounds right.
Okay. So the Budenholzer thing we literally brought up, and they went a different direction. There you go.
It's just, for me, again, the most important thing right now is developing the guys and having the rapport and bringing them along.
Mine is hit the picks.
I'm talking about from the coaching side of thing. Oh, yeah, organizationally, nothing matters more than bringing in the right guys.
We agree. I'm always prioritized. Just hit the picks. If you get Cody Williams, please, Cody Williams, be the thing. Be the thing for them.
So, I think that's kind of where we sit with things right now. We're already well over an hour right now. We will have a lottery party and a draft party somewhere. We will not do the lottery party with 1080 because it's on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So
we'll be 1080 affiliated.
Yes. Maybe we'll give them a shout out for putting something on a tab for us.
Yeah, there you go. Thanks for the credit card. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll take the company credit card for food, and we'll throw the tablecloth down.
We'll be responsible.
Promise, Kim. But, yeah, I think that's kind of we're going to do something for both. And that's kind of what we have going forward. We will start talking about draft, as we kind of lean into that. I think that's obviously the next big thing. We'll have some guys on, letting guys get away for a couple weeks. We will have a couple players that are planning to come on, and we'll have those. I think in between the draft, in the lottery and draft, we might get them post draft. Kind of depends on how things fall for workouts and how healthy guys are. But the plan is to have guys like Tu and Roops and those guys come on and check in. And then hopefully I'm trying to get Scoot on. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how and where things shake out. But beyond that, thanks for riding with us this year. Somebody got very sideways in the YouTube comments and was like, two streams in the past month? Unsubscribe. Bye. Sorry. Sorry. Like I wasn't about to do it.
We'll be better, okay? We'll be better. That's all I'll say.
I was going to say, the content's coming back now because now stuff matters.
Yeah.
As crazy and dumb as it is to say the games didn't matter, it doesn't like this stuff matters more going forward. And so we will dive heavily into that. We'll do some player reviews coming up over the next couple of weeks.
They'll be back, by the way. It's like the most empty threat you can make is I'm done.
Yeah.
Come on.
Unless I block you.
Well, please stop doing that. I have to be the one.
I haven't done it in a while.
You're like fucking King Kong going down an aisle, and I'm the guy that has to clean the mess up. And they're like, he can't stop waving his arms on the pickle jar aisle. No, I'm sorry. I'm cleaning it up. I got you right here, though, buddy. What do you need? You need dill? There you go.
So, thanks for riding with us. We appreciate you. Thank you. Like I know this is a weird season. I know people are frustrated. And thank you for cleaning up the pickle jars. It
is what it is.
Yeah.
It is what we don't need to apologize. Thank you. We hung out. We're talking hoops. We're having fun. We got a lot of stuff coming.
There you go. You got anything going on this week?
Tune into the radio show 6 to 9 and 12 to 3. I know you'll be back on the saddle. Keith Smith tomorrow. Talk a little Blazers. I want to get his view of how he views the Blazers from like an East Coast perspective. His playoff preview. I got some NBA stuff coming. I'm excited about the NBA playoffs. I think it's going to be fantastic. Clippers fans hate me right now, so go Mavericks. I think there's going to be Nuggets Celtics in the finals, which is a great matchup. And I'm pretty excited even for the play-ins, minus Chicago, Atlanta. Couldn't care less about that game.
So there you go. I will be back in the studio tomorrow, noon to 3. The press conference today running 4+ hours kind of ruined the ability for me to do the show today. So I'll be back on the rest of the week. And other than that, we'll have the draft content coming up. And, well, we'll see you when we see you. Everybody have a wonderful, wonderful week. Take a couple days to decompress, get ready for some play-in basketball, some playoffs. We'll do some watch parties as we watch along all around the league. And then there we go. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful night. You can find us on social media at Danny Marang, at Brandon Sprague, at Jack Ramsays. You can email the show, jackramsays@gmail.com. And we'll catch you guys next time. Have a wonderful night. Take care.